When we last left Tommy, the world around him had already cracked wide open. Monty Miller's shocking death at the end of Season 1 was more than just the exit of a Titan. It was the removal of the only stabilizing factor in West Texas oil politics. And in his place, we suddenly have Cammy, Monty's widow, stepping into the light with words that still echo from the trailer. "I'm meaner." That alone tells us we're no longer dealing with someone operating behind the scenes. This is a woman hungry for control, with the confidence and rage to back it up. But just as Tommy prepares to clash with Cammy for power, Episode 1 throws us into an even bigger shift: the arrival of two figures whose reputations precede them, Sam Elliott and Billy Bob Thornton. Sam Elliott comes in as Tommy's father, a man who carries not only the weight of age but also the scars of history. He is referred to simply as Pops, but there's nothing simple about him. He's the original Landman, the very one that the series' name has been whispering about since day one. That revelation alone adds a whole new dimension to Tommy's journey, because now, for the first time, he's not just a fixer trying to bend the rules of oil and survival. He's also a son standing in the long shadow of his father. And that shadow? It's deep, it's heavy, and it will test everything Tommy thinks he knows about family, business, and loyalty. Meanwhile, Billy Bob Thornton slides into the story like a storm nobody saw coming. His role has been kept under wraps, but the whispers suggest he's tied directly to the cartel storyline that already looms over Tommy's fragile empire. If Sam Elliott represents the legacy of the past, Billy Bob Thornton is the embodiment of the unpredictable present, a man whose methods are sharp, ruthless, and impossible to control. Imagine what happens when Pops, the steady, commanding presence of Sam Elliott, collides with Thornton's dangerous unpredictability. That's not just a subplot, that's the powder keg at the heart of Episode 1. And it all kicks off immediately, with no slow build-up, no hesitation. The power games between Tommy and Cammy are already intense, but now the stakes are multiplied, because Pops is not here to sit quietly on the sidelines. He's here to remind Tommy that this business, this land, and this legacy were never his alone to carry. And Thornton? He's here to remind everyone that no matter how much power they think they have, there's always someone more dangerous waiting at the edge of the board. Put all of this together, and what you get is an opening episode that doesn't just set the stage for Season 2, it lights the match and dares the audience to watch everything burn. Episode 1 wastes no time reminding us that Landman has always been about more than oil. It's about power, legacy, and survival in a world where loyalty is as fragile as glass. And now, with Sam Elliott stepping into the role of Pops, we finally see where Tommy's grit, resilience, and sometimes reckless determination truly come from. Pops is introduced not as a gentle fatherly figure, but as a man carved out of hard soil and harder choices. He's been through the boom and bust cycles of Texas oil, he's seen fortunes rise and fall, and unlike Tommy, he's not afraid to play the long game, even if it means crushing people along the way. For Tommy, this arrival is like facing a mirror that reflects everything he's tried to avoid, because Pops embodies the very traits Tommy has always resisted: cold calculation, ruthless pragmatism, and the unshakable belief that the land and the oil beneath it belong to those strong enough to seize them. Suddenly, Tommy's way of bending the rules without fully breaking them doesn't feel strong enough anymore. Pops doesn't bend rules, he rewrites them. And as soon as he appears, the hierarchy of West Texas shifts. But that shift doesn't happen in isolation, because Billy Bob Thornton's character emerges almost simultaneously, a move that feels deliberate by the writers. Thornton enters the story like smoke seeping through the cracks, unpredictable, dangerous, and impossible to ignore. He's not tied to Tommy by blood, but by something even more threatening: business. The cartel storyline teased in the trailer now begins to take shape, and Thornton's presence signals that Tommy's uneasy partnership with the cartel is about to spiral into something he can't control. Thornton's character, shrouded in mystery, is the kind of figure who doesn't need to shout to be feared. His silence speaks louder than threats, and when he does speak, it cuts with precision. This makes him the polar opposite of Pops, yet equally terrifying in his own way. If Pops is the embodiment of history and legacy, Thornton is the embodiment of chaos and the present danger of crossing lines that can't be uncrossed. Now imagine Tommy stuck between these two forces. On one side, a father who sees him as a weak successor unworthy of the Landman title, and on the other, a cartel ally who sees him as nothing more than a pawn in a much larger, bloodier game. The tension between these men doesn't just complicate Tommy's life, it threatens to unravel him completely. Pops doesn't care about cartel politics. To him, it's a distraction, a foolish risk that puts the Norris name and legacy in danger. Thornton's character, however, thrives on that chaos, using it as leverage to control outcomes and force Tommy into corners with no easy exits. And Tommy? He's stuck in the middle, trying to keep his family safe, his company alive, and his reputation intact, all while drowning in storms on every side. The brilliance of Episode 1 lies in how it layers these conflicts without ever letting the pace slow down. On the surface, we have the immediate clash between Tommy and Cammy. She's determined to take Monty's empire and reshape it in her own image, and she's not afraid to declare war on Tommy to do it. Their showdown is personal, brutal, and filled with the kind of sharp dialogue that makes you lean closer to the screen. But underneath that, Pops is pulling strings in ways Tommy doesn't yet fully see, and Thornton's character is quietly tightening the noose of the cartel's influence. These aren't separate conflicts. They're interconnected, feeding into one another until the entire foundation of Tommy's world feels like it could collapse at any second. What makes this so thrilling is the way the show uses suspense, not just in action, but in character interactions. Every word Pops says drips with authority, as if he knows something no one else does. Every look from Thornton feels like a warning that something terrible is just around the corner. And Tommy, caught in the middle, grows more desperate by the minute, trying to hold ground that is already slipping away. Even the audience can feel it. This isn't just another day in the oil fields of Texas. This is the start of a war where blood ties, business deals, and cartel threats all collide, and the winner won't just control the oil, they'll control the future of the Norris family name itself. By the time Episode 1 pushes toward its midpoint, the suspense is unbearable, because you realize the real question isn't whether Tommy can survive, it's whether he can survive without losing everything that makes him who he is. With Pops demanding obedience and legacy, and Thornton demanding compliance and fear, Tommy's choices shrink until the only way forward seems to be through betrayal, sacrifice, or both. And that's exactly why this episode feels like such a game changer. Because Landman isn't asking us to cheer for Tommy's victory, it's asking us to wonder how much of himself he can lose before he becomes just another version of the men trying to control him. As the episode unfolds, what becomes increasingly clear is that Tommy is no longer the master of his own fate. In Season 1, he was the man who thrived in chaos, someone who could maneuver around Monty's empire, negotiate with dangerous players, and still keep his head above water. But Season 2 flips that narrative completely. Now, with Pops stepping into the frame, Tommy isn't just dealing with external enemies. He's dealing with the weight of blood, history, and expectation. Pops sees Tommy as soft, too compromised by emotions, too hesitant when it comes to making hard decisions. And for Pops, hesitation is weakness, and weakness is death in the oil business. That father-son dynamic becomes one of the most electrifying threads of Episode 1 because it's not played out through warm reunions or heartfelt conversations. It's a battle of wills from the very first second. Pops doesn't arrive to comfort Tommy. He arrives to challenge him, to remind him that the Norris name was built on blood, sweat, and dominance, not on shaky alliances with cartels or fragile deals with bankers. Every word from Pops feels like a test, and Tommy knows that failing those tests doesn't just mean losing his father's respect, it means losing the right to call himself Landman. But before Tommy can even fully process Pops's return, Billy Bob Thornton's presence keeps pulling him deeper into cartel politics. Unlike Pops, Thornton doesn't carry the weight of history on his shoulders. He carries danger in the present moment. His character doesn't need to build legacies or protect family names. His only goal is power, and he's willing to use any tool, any threat, and any act of violence to secure it. What makes Thornton's role so chilling is how effortlessly he blends into the chaos. He doesn't crash into the story with explosions and gunfire. He seeps in like a poison, subtle at first, then suddenly overwhelming. Every deal he offers Tommy comes with strings attached, and those strings lead directly into a web that Tommy can't escape. Thornton doesn't just represent the cartel, he is the cartel's voice in Texas, a reminder that Tommy's decisions now carry consequences far beyond his family or his company. And the terrifying part? Thornton makes it clear that walking away is not an option. The brilliance of Episode 1 lies in the way it traps Tommy between these two men, his father and the cartel's enforcer, each demanding loyalty in completely different ways. Pops demands obedience to legacy, a return to old-school dominance, a willingness to put family pride above everything else. Thornton demands submission to power in its rawest form, where survival comes from fear and control, not respect. Both paths promise destruction if Tommy chooses wrong, but doing nothing is just as deadly. And that's where the suspense becomes unbearable, because as viewers, we're left wondering which fire Tommy will step into first. Will he betray his father's ideals to keep the cartel at bay, or will he risk cartel wrath to prove himself worthy of the Norris name? There are no safe choices, only dangerous ones, and Episode 1 makes that tension the heartbeat of the story. Meanwhile, Cammy's presence in this power struggle only raises the stakes higher. She isn't just Monty's widow anymore, she's carving out her own empire, determined to prove that she can outmaneuver Tommy at every turn. Her confidence is chilling, her strategies razor sharp, and she refuses to let anyone dismiss her as just a grieving wife. While Pops and Thornton battle for influence over Tommy, Cammy is quietly positioning herself as the queen on the chessboard, willing to strike at whichever side shows weakness first. And this is where the brilliance of Landman shines through, because Cammy, Pops, and Thornton aren't allies or enemies in the traditional sense. They're forces colliding in unpredictable ways, and Tommy is caught right in the middle of the collision. Episode 1 doesn't waste a single second dragging out these dynamics. Instead, it plunges straight into the fire, giving us tense conversations, loaded silences, and power plays that leave everyone on edge. The suspense isn't just in what's said, but in what's left unsaid. When Pops looks at Tommy, there's disappointment in his eyes, but also something darker, an expectation that Tommy will fail, because failure would prove Pops right about his son's weakness. When Thornton speaks, it's never about business in the ordinary sense, it's about dominance, about reminding Tommy that he's dealing with people who don't negotiate in boardrooms, but in blood. And when Cammy moves, it's always with the precision of someone who knows her opponents better than they know themselves. The result is a web of tension, where every move feels like it could ignite an explosion. What makes all of this so thrilling is how personal it feels. This isn't just a story about oil fields and corporate empires. It's about fathers and sons, pride and survival, legacy and betrayal. Pops isn't just another character. He's the ghost of Tommy's past come to life, forcing him to confront everything he's tried to escape. Thornton isn't just another villain. He's the embodiment of the choices Tommy made in Season 1 now coming back to haunt him. And Cammy isn't just another rival. She's the reminder that the world doesn't wait for men to sort out their power struggles. It moves forward, and those who hesitate are left behind. Together, these forces create an atmosphere where every second feels like the calm before a storm, and the audience can't look away because they know the storm is going to hit harder than anyone expects. By the time Episode 1 pushes toward its final act, the suspense is unbearable, because it's not just about who has the most power, it's about who's willing to lose the most to keep it. Pops is willing to sacrifice Tommy's pride to preserve the Norris legacy. Thornton is willing to sacrifice anyone who gets in the way of cartel business. And Cammy? She's willing to sacrifice the memory of her husband to become stronger than he ever was. And Tommy? He has to decide which sacrifices he can live with and which ones will destroy him completely. As the episode moves deeper into its second half, the emotional weight of Pops's return begins to settle over every scene. For Tommy, it's not just about clashing with Cammy or keeping Thornton's cartel influence under control anymore. It's about proving himself in the eyes of the one man whose approval he's never been able to earn. Pops doesn't speak often, but when he does, his words cut straight to the bone. He reminds Tommy of every failure, every compromise, and every moment where he chose the easy path instead of the ruthless one. To Pops, success isn't about survival. It's about dominance. And every time Tommy tries to justify his choices, Pops meets him with that calm, unwavering stare that says, "You'll never be me." That dynamic turns every interaction between them into a battle, not of fists or weapons, but of wills. And the truth is, Tommy is losing. Because while he can stand up to Cammy and he can negotiate with Thornton, facing his father means facing every doubt he's carried since childhood. But what makes this conflict even sharper is how it bleeds into Tommy's family life. Angela, his wife, is caught in the crossfire, trying to keep the family from collapsing under the weight of these battles. She sees how Pops's presence stirs up old wounds in Tommy, how Thornton's cartel demands push him toward dangerous deals, and how Cammy's power plays threaten to strip them of everything they've built. Angela tries to anchor Tommy, reminding him that their family has to come first, but Pops dismisses her voice as interference, and Thornton sees her as a weakness to exploit. Even Ainsley's departure for college becomes a point of tension, because Pops views it as another sign that Tommy can't even keep his own family close, while Tommy sees it as a chance for his daughter to escape the toxic legacy he's now drowning in. These family struggles make the suspense more than just political. It's personal, emotional, and devastating. Because every move Tommy makes in the business world now threatens to ripple back into his home, and the line between protecting his family and destroying it grows thinner by the second. Meanwhile, Cammy seizes every opportunity to twist the knife. She knows Pops looks down on Tommy, and she knows Thornton's cartel ties are pulling him deeper into danger. So she positions herself as the strong alternative, the one who doesn't flinch, the one who doesn't need approval or protection. In meetings, in negotiations, and even in whispered conversations with powerful allies, Cammy starts building her own narrative, that she is the true heir to Monty's empire, not Tommy. Her line in the trailer, "I'm meaner," isn't just a declaration. It's a warning, and in episode 1, we see her make good on that warning, playing every angle with ruthless precision. To Pops, she represents the kind of strength he wishes Tommy had. To Thornton, she's a potential ally if Tommy falters. And to Tommy, she's a constant reminder that his grip on power is slipping faster than he can hold it. What's so captivating is how the show intertwines all these threads into a single knot of suspense. Every character is pulling in a different direction, but all of them are tied together by the same central conflict. Who truly controls the future of the Norris legacy and the West Texas oil empire? Pops claims it by blood, Thornton claims it by force, Cammy claims it by cunning, and Tommy is desperately trying to claim it by survival. The genius of the writing is that none of them are fully right or fully wrong. They're all driven by motives that feel real, human, and terrifyingly relatable. And because of that, the audience is left in a constant state of tension, never sure who will come out on top or what the cost will be when the dust finally settles. As episode 1 builds toward its climax, Thornton's influence becomes harder to ignore. While Pops challenges Tommy with words and legacy, Thornton challenges him with threats that could spill blood at any moment. The cartel doesn't play games, and Thornton makes that clear in every interaction. A deal delayed, a shipment mishandled, or a betrayal whispered in the wrong ear, any of these could mean disaster, not just for Tommy's company, but for his entire family. The danger feels immediate, suffocating, and impossible to escape. And yet, Thornton never raises his voice, never loses his calm. That's what makes him so terrifying, because the quieter he speaks, the more you realize how much control he truly has.